here is some further discussion from Volume 5 that we thought you might find interesting.
I looked ahead at 8. The other thing I thought was a really interesting section of this, and I'll just mention it here because he's talking about these thrones, is a place where Steve says the leaders he says something like they're not separate from the people in that I live over here and you live over here, but they are separate from the people. And he totally contradicts himself. And he makes a case that the leaders should have a certain amount of honor, that they should be sitting on a throne, that the crown represents an authority. I wear it and you don't. The throne represents a thing that I have that you don't, that makes me separate and to live better. Wasn't it Rutherford? Is that the JW guy, or am I confusing?
Yeah,
Um,
it was. He was the second JW
Yeah.
guy.
and was it him? Yeah, it was him. He lived in San Diego. We went to his house one time. He lived in
Yeah.
a big mansion and he had Rolls Royces in the
Yep.
garage. And he
Yep.
said,
Yep.
I'm just keeping, it's not my Rolls Royce. I'm keeping it for Moses and Elijah when they arrive. This is for them. Um, and he had that same sense where he lived very different from the people. He fleeced the people and he lived different. And when I heard Steve talk about that, and when I hear him talk about these thrones and all of that, um, it comes down to I would, I believe, them living in bigger houses, literally bigger houses than the congregation, them having more honor, them sitting in better seats at service, them getting served first at meals. All these little subtle status um, status cues
Would
that
this
matter
be
a lot.
would this be there's a dignity that comes with the position of authority, and there is a sense that there needs to be a separation from the people so that the people, not a separation in terms of I'm just away from you, but there needs to be some separation so that the people understand I am here and the governor is there. I live here, they're there. And this is where they dispense the governing things, the things that govern our societies. So it is not strange that there would be a governor.
That's exactly it. And he was talking about the White House. I hated when he said that.
What you want to talk about that? We can drop that in.
When I was a leader there, even I just do not subscribe to that kind of leadership, and I don't like those kinds of leaders. I don't think a leader should ask of the people to do things that he's unwilling to do. I know they have different roles. It's not always his job. He can't be out there operating the shovel all the time, etc. But that's not because you're better than them. The eye can't say to the hand, "I don't need you." You know, they need to see themselves as an intricate part of an entire body, and that even the toe contributes to the body with the same amount of inherent dignity as the brain or the eyeballs. And that sort of leadership devolves into tyranny, into people living better than the population, especially when you've got a kind of communistic bend already. Let's put all our money in the pot. And then there's another rule about the pot is that we take more out of the pot because we have more dignity than you, because we're doing really hard. I mean, it might not even be hard. Let's be frank, it's not harder necessarily to be a leader. You get to skip a lot of this stuff. Rules don't apply. There's a lot of benefits to being a leader already. And if you go ahead and live over here, as he says, you shouldn't be separate from the people. You can't lead people that you don't know how they live. You don't live in their dirt. You don't experience their lives. You don't empathize with them. You live differently. It's exactly the problem with our country right now, is that elite people have no clue what it's like to struggle for a job, to be food insecure, you know, uh, and then they want to make rules for everybody else. And these guys are the same way. They don't understand exactly what it's like to obey the rules. They're allowed to pick out music that they want to listen to. The rules are slacker on them because they are mature enough to decide if they want to watch a movie or open their top button or whatever. Nobody else gets to do that. They all live under authority. Nobody else gets to have those kinds of freedoms. It's a big turnoff. Big turnoff.
Addison Everett, I think it was, I don't think you should hold me to the name, but I think it was him, made a comment about the fact that in essence, we shouldn't have our own thoughts. We should think their thoughts.
Mhm.
And that to me was mind blowing. Why would I surrender what makes me who I am? You know, my beliefs and my opinions to somebody else based on their position. If you have a better idea, I'm willing to listen to it. And if you're right, I'm certainly willing to, you know, swing my beliefs around. But I'm not so fond of the idea that because you believe something, I must believe it and I can't believe what I want to believe.
Yeah. That's a slippery slope because it can sweep away everything. You know, I read a quote that said something like all religion needs to be subjectively discerned. To see God is the only thing. I can't know what you know. I think you wrote in your notes here, Lee, maybe. Oh no, you wrote it on Facebook. Talking about atheism and stuff, I think, and you said there's no real proof for theism or atheism. Everybody needs to weigh these things themselves, right? And that's true. There's no getting around that. There's no reason to turn off your brain like that, because if you do have that kind of faith in Ray and Steve, you can just as easily be a Muslim or a Hindu or a Mormon or whatever. Just believe what somebody who says they know says, and that's all good enough for you.
Yeah, it's really a two-edged sword. It cuts one way because you lose who you are, and you're surrendering your identity, and you're being somebody's doormat. But it cuts in the other way as well. You wind up with people who are your lords, your governors, your kings, who control you.
Right. And then the other extreme of that is just say, nobody tells me what to do. I don't need to be taught anything by anybody. And I only believe the things that feel right to me or seem to make sense to me, etc. You don't necessarily want to be there either, but there is a healthy measure of that is healthy, and that frankly you can't escape. You have to look at what Steve says and at least be like the Bereans and take it back to the scriptures. But I would challenge you to be like the Bereans and challenge the scriptures. And you have to look at even those things and say, is this good? Does this make sense? Does this work for me? Ultimately, those are the only filters that you have.
Which brings us back to the very beginning when we're looking at what they're saying, that they say scripture says this. Well, is that actually what scripture says? You need to read it for yourself and see what it actually says, and don't add things in between the lines that aren't there.
Steve is asking for a separation of people in this quote. He's really looking for a two-tier system. And matter of fact, if I recall, Kelly, you were talking about going to a meal and expecting to eat with the apostles.
Yes. So that was at camp meeting. And they had prepare a big lunch after when the meeting is over. So that was at lunchtime. And I was waiting in line, and I went into the dining hall, and I'm looking and looking to see one of the apostles. And I kept looking and looking, and they were never there. So the next meal, same thing. Next day, same thing. And finally, I said to somebody, like, I'd like to meet with one of the apostles or at least say hi to them, but I don't see them. Oh, they eat in separate quarters.
Really?
And then toward the end of the meeting, there was someone who kept eating lunch and mostly talking with Delia Lee. And they said to Delia, oh, I'd like you to come and meet my daughter. She's serving over where the apostles are eating. So she took Delia over there. I forget what I was doing. And Delia said, the food is even different.
I was going to ask that.
Yeah. Their meals are much better than the slop that they're serving in the dining hall.
I lived in Mexico as a missionary for a long time, and I was a big Hudson Taylor fan. And from him, I learned you've got to do what the people are doing. You can't eat different food than them. That symbolism is lost on nobody. I don't like that.
Yeah. It brings to mind scripture where Jesus said, you want to be great, be the servant of all.
Yeah.
And I don't see that. I don't see Ray as a servant. I don't see Steve as a servant. I see them as
Kings.
I want to say abusers, but it's too late not to say it, I guess, at this point, but a similar word without as much sting to it.
No, there's a lot of that. The psychology is very similar to that.
Yeah.
There's a lot of that.
And that's again what I was meaning, Ben, when I said I don't see the signs of an apostle. I'm not looking again for miracles, but I'm just looking for their behavior.
Yeah.
The way they behave, the way they speak. When Steve says, if you don't believe me, get out of here. You're a racist. Leave. We never liked you. We will never miss you. It's like, I don't recall ever hearing Jesus give that speech when I'm reading through the New Testament.
Totally agree. Those are the things that matter. Even if these guys could raise the dead, that honestly wouldn't move me. Just because you can raise the dead, heal the sick, that doesn't mean you're right about anything else. It doesn't mean you know how the stars move, or the apostles didn't understand germ theory or physics or necessarily even morals just because they can do other miracles. What is impressive to me, my sister and I were talking about the Buddhist monk Thich Nhat Hanh, and the way that he just lived out what he believed. He was a gentle, nonviolent guy, and you could tell that it came out of every pore in his body that he was a spiritual and good person. And that was what recommends his ministry to me, not any wonders or any cloud, any big mass of people that might follow somebody. None of that. What is the purpose of your spirituality and your religion? Is it just a ticket to heaven that we need Ray to punch? I think that is pretty low thinking. Or is it something that is going to cause you to be born again and changed and happy and fixed and inhabit all the virtues that make the world good, and make heaven heavenly? That's what it is. And you've got to see those virtues lived out in someone to know that what they're pitching works. Does it make you better? Does it make the world better? I'll know by your fruit, and then I'll glorify your Father that's in heaven. I don't see that in these guys.
No, for them, it's very much a ticket that Ray punches.
It's a ticket that Ray punches.
Yep. And Elizabeth Opal even said in one of her messages, or no, I don't think it was her. Maybe it was Addison. I can't remember. But so if you get to the gates of heaven and you hear the words, "I never knew you," all you have to do is say, Ray Tinsman, and they'll let you in.
Bonkers.
That'd be a good new word, bonkers.
Disappointment is a bitter pill to swallow, paying back the hope I borrowed from someone I never knew. And it's a forfeit, humans in the suits of heroes, undressed by whispered conspiracies in quest for truth. But if the truth is what you're looking for, you don't get to choose the answers anymore. So tell me, do you really still believe that the truth will set you free?